Okay, so we're going to go over two primary source documents here, and I'm going to show you how to compare and contrast the arguments from each one. Now, what I want you to do is to kind of try to identify the primary argument that the author is making as we go through. The two articles we're going to be reading is Common Sense by Thomas Paine, which is one of the most prominent political pamphlets ever produced. He was arguing for the American Revolution, for declaring independence from Britain, and Reconciliation Better Than Independence by William Cato Smith, which is arguing the exact opposite. So you're looking at two documents published in the same year that are really kind of in conversation with another. One's outlining the reasons for independence, one's outlining the reasons for remaining a part of the British Empire. And once you're done, we're going to be going through and we're going to be filling in these paragraph frames in order to write a full paragraph that compares and contrasts the arguments for each. So, let's start with Thomas Paine. But Britain is the parent country, say some. Then the more shame upon her conduct. Even brutes do not devour their young, nor savages make war upon their family. Wherefore the assertion, if true, turns to her reproach. But it happens not to be true, and only partly so, and the phrase parent or mother country hath been Jesuitically adopted by the kings and his parasites, with a low papistical design of gaining an unfair bias on the credulous weakness of our minds. Europe, and not England, is the parent country of America. This new world hath been the asylum for the persecuted lovers of civil and religious liberty from every part of Europe. Hither have they fled, not from the tender embraces of their mother, but from the cruelty of the monster. And it is so far true of England, that the same tyranny which drove the first immigrants from home pursues their descendants still. Europe is too thickly planted with kingdoms to be long at peace, and whenever a war breaks out between England and any foreign power, the trade of America goes to ruin, because of her connection with England. The next war may not turn out like the last, and it should not. Should it not, the advocates for reconciliation now will be wishing for separation then, because neutrality in that case would be a safer convoy than man of war. So basically what he's saying there is, a very complicated way of saying, listen, if we wanted to be a part of Europe, we'd still be in Europe, right? There's a reason that so many of us settled here in the Americas. We're not, this was not the tender embraces of the mother, but the cruelty of the monster, right? That we were not happy living in England, and this is why we're in America in the first place. And this is the first reason that it should not be a surprise that we want to become independent, that we want to break away from England. And then it gives some of the reasons, right? It says Europe is constantly at war with one another. England is constantly starting fights with other European powers. And America keeps getting dragged into this, and this hurts our trade. This makes it more difficult for us to exist. It's not a benefit to us. All right, let's continue. So everything that is right or natural pleads for separation. The blood of the slain, the weeping voice of nature cries, 'tis time to part. Even the distance at which the Almighty hath placed England and America is a strong and natural proof that the authority of the one over the other was never the design of heaven. The time, likewise, at which the continent was discovered adds weight to the argument, and the manner in which it was peopled increases the force of it. The Reformation was preceded by the discovery of America, as if the Almighty graciously meant to open sanctuary to the persecuted in future years, when home should afford neither friendship nor safety. So what he's saying is that we have the Reformation in Europe, which is this kind of radical transformation of Christianity and differing interpretations of the Bible that is coming out, and this is coinciding with the beginnings of settlement by Europeans in the Americas. And he's saying that a lot of the people that end up populating the Americas are the people that have these new ideas, these Protestant rather than Catholic Europeans that are actually forced from their homeland because their religious values differ from from the majority. And so he's saying that just this simple idea, right, that they're fleeing in order to be free to continue to practice their own beliefs, really kind of highlights the fact that the bonds between Europe and the Americas is not as strong as you would think. And he's saying that, look, this is halfway across the world. The distance at which the Almighty hath placed England and America, it doesn't make sense that one should have authority over the other. At another point in here, he says that the idea that an island, Britain, should exercise dominion over a continent, the Americas, is just ridiculous, right? So this is what he's saying, that it doesn't make sense. So essentially what he's arguing, right, is that these are people that left Europe. And they left Europe for good reasons. They left Europe because their values were different. And the continued connections with Europe are actually hurting, say, American trade. They're hurting American people. And so it only makes sense that they would break free. Now let's move on to Cato. And he says reconciliation is better than independence. So why do you think he would say that? Well, let's take a look. We have already declared ourselves independent as to all useful purposes by resisting our oppressors upon our own foundation. And while we keep upon this ground without connecting ourselves with any foreign nations to involve us in fresh difficulties, or endanger our liberty still further, we are able in our own element upon the shore to continue this resistance, and it is our duty to continue it till Great Britain is convinced, as she must be, of her fatal policy, and open her arms to reconciliation upon the permanent and sure footing of mutual interest and safety. Upon such a footing we may again be happy. Our trade will be revived. Our husbandmen, our mechanics, our artificers will flourish, our language, our laws, our manners being the same as those with the nation with which we are again to be connected. The connection will be natural, and we shall the more easily guard against future innovations. Pennsylvania has much to lose in this contest, and much to hope for from a proper settlement of it. We have long flourished under our charter government. What may be the consequence of another form we cannot pronounce with certainty, but this we know, that it is a road we have not traveled, and may be worse than it is described. So it's important to note here, he's not saying Britain hasn't done anything to harm the Americas, right? Says, even refers to Britain as our oppressors, right? We are resisting the oppressors upon our own foundation. And he's saying that resistance, right? So refusing to submit to the Stamp Act, for instance, and this sort of thing. He's saying this was justified and we should be doing this. We should be fighting back, but we should not be trying to sever these bonds. It's our duty to continue to resist until Great Britain is convinced of their fatal policy. So it's saying the policies that Britain is pursuing in regards to the Americas. This is not a point of debate among the loyalists, the ones that wanted to remain a part of Britain, and the patriots who wanted to declare independence, right? Both are saying we're not happy with Britain's policies towards us. We are not happy with the fact that they're imposing these taxes on us without giving us representation in Parliament. But in terms of what should be done about that, this is where we start to see this separation, right? One is saying, listen, it's our job to convince Great Britain that these policies are bad and that it's in their interest to reconcile with us. And the other is saying, look, the benefits of continuing this relationship really are not all that great. And there's all of these reasons why these bonds that we share, the ones laid out in here, right? Our language, our laws, our manners being the same. He's saying, well, these similarities aren't as strong as they would suggest, right? A lot of people left because their values were different, because they were Protestants who were being persecuted back in their home countries. Right? That for the most part, people that left their home countries were not all that happy there. So one is arguing for continuing to resist these efforts to tax, but still remaining a part of Britain. The other is arguing it is time to just make it on our own, right? So what you're going to be doing here is you're going to fill in all of the blanks here on this document. And once you're done with that, you'll have a solid paragraph that outlines the arguments and ways that each side supports that argument. So it starts by saying in the article, and then gives you a blank, right? You're just putting in the article's name here. So in the article, Common Sense, and it says author's name. You're going to put Thomas Paine. So in the article, Common Sense, Thomas Paine, and it gives you three choices: argues, asserts, claims. You're just going to choose one of those and circle it. So in the article, Common Sense, Thomas Paine argues that, and then you're just going to put what you believe his primary argument is. Then it says author's last name, right? So you've got your first sentence here. This outlines the argument. Then Paine supports their claim by, and then there's a whole list of words you can choose. Again, you just circle one. Supports his claim by explaining, right? And then you write down something that they use to support their claim. Now you have two sentences. You've got the first half of your compare and contrast paragraph, right? Then you move on. On the other hand, or in contrast, or in comparison, right? Cato, William Cato Smith, in the article Reconciliation Better Than, what was it? Reconciliation Better Than Independence? Claims that, and then you outline their main argument, right? And then Cato supports their claim by, and then you do the same thing, right? Now you have this whole paragraph. Then you're just going to rewrite it down here at the bottom.